Welcome to the Life Success and Legacy Podcast. We're glad you're here, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
Hey everybody, we want to welcome you back to the next episode of the Life Success Legacy Podcast. I am joined here by Team Whitman, and I'm so excited. I actually got to see you guys recently in the flesh when we were down in Houston for a boot camp. It's good to see you guys again so quickly. How are you?
Same, doing great.
Good. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So I want to give some context. You guys are both donning your red today. And
it's pink. It may not
it's pink.
And I was like, we're gonna clash, but I didn't care.
So this will probably be released after this weekend. Yeah. So people will be hearing or watching this after the fact. But yes, showing the represent. So tell us what your day is going to look like today, Toby.
Okay, so we're recording this podcast obviously in the morning. We are in Katy, Texas, right outside of Houston. So pretty much after this is done, myself and another friend of mine are driving to San Antonio to go see the Final Four.
Yes.
It'll be a long day because U of H does not play until near 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock at least. And then it's about a 2.5-hour drive home. Yeah. So we'll be home very, very early Sunday morning.
And if they make it to the finals, will you go again?
That is a question I haven't really thought too much about.
Oh,
just because I'm trying to play the role of I'm not looking too far ahead.
Yes.
I would love to go, but really that's kind of a conversation that we need to have.
Let's do it right here in front of all of our listeners. Right? We always tell people when we're doing our coaching sessions and we get into like marriage conversations, we always stop and go, now you guys know we charge double when it gets into marriage counseling, right? Double of zero is still zero.
Right.
How excited are you to get to go?
This is it's something that I honestly I haven't done. There's been 2 or 3 Final Fours in Houston, and I've kind of put it off because I didn't want to go unless I was kind of going to see my team, right?
Yeah.
Last year they had a shot, but you know, injuries, all that kind of stuff, whatever, they lost, right?
Right.
So one of my best friends, her brother, actually, we go to the Friday, the open practice and things like that, on that Friday before.
Okay.
So we got to see all the Final Four teams and everything last year, but you know, we didn't go to the games. But this is something like I'm beyond psyched, like to go and actually be able to see them play. I saw them play their first game of the year, and now I'm hoping to see them obviously Saturday and then possibly Monday night, you know, in their last game of the year, right?
Yeah.
So that would be a really, really cool thing for me.
So Kelly, is there anything that Toby is more passionate about than U of H basketball?
Absolutely not. So it's like a double. Like basketball is his number one, always has been. And then March Madness, ever since we started dating, has been like this like extravagant event, like the whole month. And they would do brackets with friends and everybody throws in money. And then they'd get TV, like 3 or 4 different TVs in the living room so they could watch all the games at once.
Yep.
And then he graduated from U of H, you know, fell in love with U of H. We have football U of H season tickets. We don't have basketball because they would be significantly more money than the football, but football's not so great right now. Yeah. So, but U of H with basketball, it's like a double whammy. It's like Christmas morning right now, and he's getting ready to go open all his presents.
So Kelly, is there anything that you are just as passionate about as Toby is about U of H?
I don't think so. No, I'm not. There's nothing that even comes to mind. So nothing that
No. I mean, she went to UT, so she follows UT football.
Absolutely. So I guess if we're looking for a comparison, it would be UT football. I graduated there in 2004, and you know, during its heyday, they won national championship that January of 2005.
Yeah.
So that is probably my comparison, but it's not even on the same level. Like, we don't live in Austin. We get to go to maybe one game a year. We'll go back and go to a game and hang out there for the day. But it's definitely not something we get to live like we did.
Did you follow the women's basketball program?
We did this year. They did really well. We watched them last night. Actually, unfortunately, they did lose, but they did a fantastic job this year. Made it really far. So yeah, that was exciting.
Cool. How did you two meet?
Great question.
So, just kind of an interesting story. I was roommates with her brother for 4 years. He was actually, when I graduated high school in California and moved out here in 97 and met her brother working at a grocery store 2 months later. And we, became friends and all that kind of stuff, and then moved in together a couple of years later after he graduated and all that kind of stuff. And then, so I had known her and her family for years. And then we started dating in
Now wait a sec. You've known her and her family. Were you ever had your eye on her? Like you're like,
Not necessarily. We just kind of were in different places all the time. She's 3 years younger than I am, so it was just kind of it wasn't, the timing was weird, obviously, when we first met, and so we finally kind of fell into the same place. I guess it was her 21st birthday. We kind of went out and with her and her brother and things like that. And 2003.
Let's all count.
Right. So, that was kind of fun, and we kind of hung out and realized, hey, you're kind of a fun person to hang out with and things like that. And so we kind of started slowly, got the ball rolling, dating and things like that. And, a couple of years later, we ended up, getting married, having kids and all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah. How was that starting out? Did you guys come to your relationship with similar financial philosophies? Like, from what was the background that you were taught or modeled, or from your parents in terms of relationship with money or knowledge?
So I'll say no, we did not. Okay, good. I'm glad we're on the same page there. So
so the training began.
We got married. We joined finances. So, it was harder for me, I'll say, than for him, because I had the savings, not very much, but I had savings, and he had debt. He had school debt. He was still trying to get through college, having to pay for himself to get through college and things like that. So after we got married, or maybe not after, maybe a little bit right before we got married, he tells me, what his debt is and things like that. So I had to suck it up. I'm like, okay. So we got married, we joined finances, and I looked for what I knew to do at the time, which is something I think my mom or dad, kind of directed me to, is find a credit card that you can open that has a 0 interest transfer fee for the life, because all of his stuff was on a credit card. He was paying interest every month because it was thousands of dollars of debt. Like 10. It wasn't back in when we're 20, it's like a lot. But so we found a credit card. We transferred everything to that credit card, and that way we weren't paying interest. We just had to pay the debt, and we just kind of chipped away at the debt. And that was all that credit card was for, was just to hold it. And once it was done, we closed it. So that was kind of our first come together, how we were going to handle finances. Like I said, at the time, he was still in school. I had graduated. I was working. And so one of the first things we decided to do was I was going to be responsible for finances every month. Okay. It was a horrible decision.
Why is that?
Because I hate paying bills. Jeez. I don't like giving away my money. So it was painful every month to be like, here's money, here's money. It was very stressful. So he's like, just stop, give it to me, I've got it. And so from that point forward, he has been the responsible bill payer of the family. Okay.
And that's been better for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Better for all of us, I think.
So you guys are married, you're starting out, you're figuring out how to do this, you're addressing the credit card, college debt, that whole thing. Then when did you guys start to learn about IBC and that evolution that led to that?
Many years later.
Yeah, it was it was probably about 12 or 13 years after we got married, in 2019.
I think it was when we met you and Mike Everett for the first time. You guys came and did an in-person boot camp in Houston,
and
with Mike and Pay.
Yeah, we were invited by Mike and Pay, along because I'm a teacher, so I was working with them, and they invited a lot of the teacher friends and everything like that to come, and we were one of the few that showed up, and we kind of heard the boot camp and went through everything, and we had been looking into, hey, what can we kind of do with our money? What can we do? That kind of stuff. I was of the opinion, hey, we need to get life insurance so that if something does, knock on wood, happen to us, the house will be paid off. The kids can have stuff for college, things like that. She was a little bit more, as we went through the boot camp, she really looked at the cash value portion and was much more interested in that, I think. And so it was a great marriage of the two. Obviously, as we went through the boot camp, it was just kind of like I got what I wanted in the death benefit. She got what she wanted in that extra cash value to, update the house and do things like that.
Right.
And so it was something that we really kind of looked at and was like, this is really kind of something that might work.
This might actually work.
Yeah. So we went through the boot camp, and I don't think it wasn't that year, was it?
It was early 20. Yeah. Because our first policies, I think we opened in COVID, March of 20.
It was right before COVID.
So we met with you guys. We went home, we talked about it, we did a dream conversation with you. We had just moved into this house earlier that year in August of 19, and we had things we wanted to do, updates we wanted to do in the house. So I know that was one of the things we talked about. So we did that, and then we just looked at our finances and what we had and what we felt comfortable, starting the IBC policies at and things like that. And that took a couple of months, right? And then we off to the races. In March, we opened 4 policies, one for each of us. And then we have 2 kids. So smaller ones on each one of them.
Same thing we did. Yeah. Just in knowing you guys and hearing your story again and all that, it reminds me so much of our story with our 4 and how we started and being an educator and all that kind of stuff. So did you, as you were learning about IBC, as you were hearing this for the first time, did you guys have any skepticism or any hurdles you had to overcome to get to the point where you're like, oh yeah, this makes sense for us?
Go ahead.
So the only skepticism I'll have is I'll say I think we've chatted about this before. I'm a little bit tighter with my money than this one is.
A little bit. Yeah.
A little bit.
And I've always been that way since I was a kid. Like I would just collect it and hold it, and be like, should I spend it? Which my parents always, thought was funny because my brother and I were very different. It would like burn a hole through his pocket, and mine would just kind of sit there and do nothing. Yeah. So, for us, I'll say for me, to come to the decision to give away a significant amount of our savings to open these 4 policies was the biggest hurdle for me, and then realizing that it's an annual premium. So you pay it every year, 100% for those first 4 years. So after having those conversations with you and Mike and Pay and learning about how this actually works, giving that money away the first time, but understanding, I think it was easier because y'all were wonderful educators and taught me how the renewal process works and things like that. And, you can take the cash value and help, pay the next annual premium if that's what you needed to do. Luckily, we ended up being able to pay our, next year annual premium with brand new money. We did not have to dip into the cash value or anything like that. But that was, I think, the biggest hurdle for me. And then we just we opened them and then we just let them sit, because it's like, okay, we did it. Now what? So we were like, so, we had the dream conversation, and, one of the reasons, like he said, that I wanted it was the cash value, and things like that, the access back with the money. It's like, okay, so what should we do? We wanted to do things in the house. What should we do? So we spent $1,500, making a walkway in our kitchen a little bit bigger and making the opening bigger. It's like, we had that in savings. We had that, and I was like, okay, so we took it out and we're gonna put it right back. So it took us a little bit to learn how to use them properly and things like that. But I'll say that was the biggest hurdle for me. What about you?
I just think it wasn't so much a hurdle for me, because, as I said before, I worked with Mike and Pay, and Mike was telling me all these crazy things they were doing, and I'm just kind of like, you guys are teachers, man. I'm like, I know how much you make. And they're just kind of telling me this stuff, and I'm just kind of like, well, and so I came into it going like, how do you do this? And they, Mike was great at going really slow at telling me, hey, this is how we started, right? And then yes, and going over it. I mean, to this day, Mike and Pay live down the street from us, so we kind of, hey, we have a question. Can we come over and bring you dinner? Let's do that. And so they're great. And if we have any questions, we talk with you and Shelly and Mike and Pay, and we can do all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't that much of a hurdle, because I knew people that have done it, right? Like Mike.
And you trusted them.
Yes. Mike Kwong was great at, explaining things. And it was kind of like, oh, well, that makes sense, right? So it was just one of those things that it made sense. And so it took a little while. But like I said, it just made sense. And so we kind of rolled with it. And like she said, it took us a little while to kind of understand fully what we're doing with it.
Right.
But now we've done upgrades on the house. And
I was going to say, give examples to our listeners of what are the ways that you've financed your own life using your IBC system. What are examples?
We put a pool in 2 years ago.
Okay.
And it'll be paid off at the end of the summer. I think so. That's the biggest kind of thing that we've done. But we also, like I said, the many different things in the house. We had just moved in. There were things I wanted to do. Update the kitchen. We did that. Put new floors in. We've done that. Just did a couple of vacations. We've done that as well. So just living,
Final Four tickets.
Final Four tickets.
Yeah.
Which were more than the pool.
Right. Close.
So not having to pull back and just being able to live the life that we want to live, and not overly extravagant, within your means.
Sure.
But, just being comfortable enough to not be so worried all the time about the funds.
Yeah.
I'm curious, between the two of you, and maybe it's both of you, but who is the most honest banker about, hey, we're going to make sure that we're an honest banker, we're making policy loan repayments, we're paying ourselves back?
I think we both do that.
I think we both do.
Yeah.
Having said that, we talked about the bills earlier and who pays them. So that's me. And so it's always one of those things where
I'm just checking in. Hey, did you do?
Well,
did
and
you
that's.
Hey, did you transfer the money? Because we need to send that money over. So
well, and then her kind of going, hey, do we have the cash value to do this and things like that? And so that's when we kind of have more of that conversation of like, oh, okay, do we have or do we have to wait, a couple of months, those kind of things.
Right.
But I think we're both pretty good about paying things back. That was, I think that was one of the big things that we kind of got from the boot camp too, was make sure you pay yourself back, right? Be an honest banker. And so, as she said before,
don't steal from the grocery store.
Right. Right. Yeah. And so that's why the first couple things that we did on the house, we already had the money for, right? So we just kind of went, okay, we're going to pay for this and do it. And so that kind of taught us like, hey, now we can wait a couple months, pay it back in 6 months, pay it back in 4 months, pay it back in 8 months, things like that. And so that really kind of helped us out, having the money first, and then kind of knowing, oh, okay, as long as I'm honest, this really does work.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, you mentioned you bought 4 policies when you first started. Have you expanded beyond that at this point?
We have 8 now? 9.
8.
8. Okay.
8. Well, yeah, 8.
Talk about that a little bit, because a common question that people say is, well, why do I need more than even just 1 policy? And 2, another question is, how do you know when the right time to start a new policy is? So just personalize that for our listeners. Like, what was your guys' process?
So we started with the 4, and going through it, as you go through, right? You your team teaches, right? Your first 4 years are large because of the PUA and things like that, and then it just kind of drops off. So we had always kind of put a bullet point in. Okay, once we're done with those 4, like heck yeah, we're going to jump into it again and get some more cash value, get some more death benefit out of it, all those kind of things.
I will say it probably took us a couple years to get to that thought process,
right?
So we didn't do that like right off the bat, but after I think year 2, it all started clicking a lot better, because we've already been through a year. We've seen the process. Okay, we've paid the annual premiums again. Oh, okay. Well, eventually we're not going to have to pay that large chunk, but unless something changes in our life, we're still going to have the funds to do that. So
so we kind of as we said, we started in March of 2020. And so we kind of went through and had all of those policies and things like that. And we kind of, it was great. And like you said, like we said, we used them 4, 5, 6 times, I think. And then it was kind of crazy. We opened a couple more policies and put the pool in, right? So we immediately kind of used some of that cash value
at the
same time. And so it was kind of crazy, but we made it work, and we crunched the numbers and did all that kind of stuff, and talked with you guys, and was like, oh, okay, well, this is how we can make it work and get it paid off in less than 3 years, right?
Right.
So doing that really kind of helped. And then we opened, like I said, a couple more policies, I think in 23, and then we opened a few more on the kids a couple of years later. And so now we have 8. And, we're using most of that cash value, and, just rolling stuff together in our income snowball, plus in our, doing upgrades on the house. And we put in a new roof last year and things like that, so, I mean, and that's pretty much paid off too, and so it's like, it's just, it's just kind of crazy, like how we can fund things
without going to another bank,
right? Without like asking the bank for money, right?
We don't go. We haven't had. No, I'm gonna knock on wood before I say that again.
Right.
We have not had to go to the bank and get any loan. Like, we have one credit card through our bank that has a low, I don't know, amount of money. I guess we can take, low balance on it, like that. We pay the credit card off on a monthly basis. But we're able to do all of this stuff without having. Now, I will say a caveat. We did go take out a loan for the pool to pay the pool company right off the bat, so we have a payment plan on the pool, but we're
using the cash value for that.
We're using the cash value to help pay off our pool. So we'll pay our monthly thing, but then we are sending chunks to them. So by the end of the summer, right before my son goes off to college, our goal is to have that pool paid off so that we can then worry about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So then the next thing pops up.
So I had the opportunity to meet your son at the boot camp in Houston, Jake.
Yes.
So I'd love to kind of hear a little bit of like a contrast of how you guys were, either how relationship with money, thinking about money was modeled or taught to you guys, if at all, as you grew up. And now, what are you doing the same or different with your 2 kids?
Sure.
You want me to go?
Yeah. Well, I'll go first, I guess. So, growing up, my parents, they we were middle class, you know, not struggling or anything like that. We're not rich by any means. You know, they were very hard workers. You know, my dad had 2 jobs. My mom had a full-time job. So they worked very hard to give us the lifestyle that we lived in. And we lived in, you know, 2-story, 4-bedroom house. You know, they paid for my brother and I's college, but they went and took out
what a gift
to do that. So they wanted to make sure we came out of college without having to have this huge debt looming over us. So they took it upon themselves to do that, you know. So they went and took out loans and paid it off themselves. So, but I knew how hard they worked to give us the life that we lived. I will say I don't recall a whole lot of money conversations. It was
like
just
strategy or philosophy or anything like that. Just work hard and save.
By watching. You know, we got allowances. We had chores. We had to, you know, we got allowances, and then we had the report card thing. Or if you get an A, you get $3. If you get a B, you get $2. You know, so they taught us, you know, you work, you get, you know, a payment. You get money for working. You know, and the harder you work, the more money you get. And then, you know, when my brother, you know, was 17 or what, you know, he went off and got his first part-time job. I was 16 and I remember working as a lifeguard in the summer. So they taught us, you know, the value of work and things like that. So like I said, I don't think we had like huge money conversations. It was just, they taught us through their actions. When I went off to college, you know, they paid for everything, but little by little, every year, my dad's like, okay, now this bill's your responsibility. All right, now this bill's your responsibility. And so by the end of college, he was basically paying for college, but I had gotten a part-time job up in Austin, and I was paying for all my utilities, you know, maybe my apartment, I can't remember. But, you know, there was a chunk of it that I had already taken on as my bills and not his bills. So just little by little, they gradually passed everything off.
So that modeling of hard work, right? That discipline, that working hard, that was modeled for you, but not necessarily like strategic conversations about money.
No, I don't. If we did, I don't remember. No, it was just the work ethic.
Yeah,
and that's something that they've instilled in me because I try to pass on to my kids. Is you know, I know you're tired, it's hard, you got to get up, you got to go to school, you're going to have a break at this point, you know, kind of a thing. You know, go and work hard and study and make good grades. You know, that's your job.
Yeah. So, How about you, Toby?
So I'm kind of the same. We grew up of humble means. You know, I genuinely didn't have a job through high school or anything. I was playing sports and things like that. So anything that I was given, you know, or any money that I had, I made through my parents, right? Chores or them giving it to me, right? Different things like that. But they never really said anything about strategies or, you know, hold on to it or do anything like that. It was more kind of, you know, just kind of save, you know, that kind of thing. And, you know, make sure you have enough, you know, that kind of stuff, but not anything super big, right? I moved out, you know, when I moved out of my parents' house and started doing school and all that kind of stuff, you know, I suddenly became responsible for everything. And it was, whoa, okay. And so that was kind of difficult, right? Budgeting and doing that kind of stuff. But I was living paycheck to paycheck, you know, but you know, if I needed anything extra, you know, it was credit card and things like that. And I was never really taught like, hey, maybe not the best idea, right? You know, so when we did get married, my father's very much a Dave Ramsey person. And he gave us the Dave Ramsey book, the Total Money Makeover or whatever it's called. Yeah. And we kind of, we read it, and that's kind of what we kind of followed for a few years, you know, just to kind of get us out of debt and just kind of manage finances, right? But, you know, we kind of looked at that too as, you know, I understand that, and that's a great base. You know, Kelly says that all the time, you know, it's a great base. It's a great starting point, but
discipline.
Yes. But once you get to that point, we want to take a vacation. We work hard. We deserve one, And so that was kind of one of the things that really got us into the IBC policies was how can we fund that without breaking the bank? Right. Yeah. How can we, manage that without having to put everything on the credit card and not knowing how we're going to pay for it? So when we started our policies, that was kind of something too that we started funding was our vacations. It was, one of those things that was like, oh, this is great. We don't have to worry about anything. It's great. So we can go back to California. We can do those kind of things. So, but as far as, an education about money, we didn't really, I don't think we really got one.
Okay. So I'm curious, you've shared a little bit about how you guys came up and any kind of financial literacy or not, right? It was basically modeling and hard work and those things, but really no strategies or even direct teaching about money.
Right.
And I think many of us could say the same thing, right? Now I'm curious that you guys are parents, right?
Yes.
Have you done things differently with your own kids? Have you been intentional in a different way?
You go first.
Okay.
So I think, with the two of us looking at money a little bit differently, right? I'm a little bit freer with my money and she's very kind of tight with money.
Yeah.
It's a nice balance, right? We can kind of go like, hey, and tell them like, I know they want to go somewhere. We don't quite have the money for it and things like that, right? That's kind of what we started out as, right? We didn't really start teaching them too much about money until, 2 years ago when our son took a financial class in school. And we realized
they teach those in school?
So now, but it's like an elective, right?
Okay.
And so like art, something like that. I don't remember what it was called. I think it was financial literacy or something like that.
Yeah.
But then we realized as he's going through it and he's telling us, over the dinner table, what's going on, we're realizing it's literally the Dave Ramsey book.
Oh, teaching it in school.
Yes. Clear as day.
And we're kind of like, okay, that's a good start, right? That's a good start. But then they came out with, you should have the money already to pay for school, cars, all that kind of stuff. And it was like, how the heck are you going to have money for school when you're 18?
Right.
And so it was kind of one of those things that started our conversations over dinner of, okay, we've started an IBC policy for you. This is how we're planning on paying for your school, right? We're going to utilize some of the cash value. We're going to utilize some of our income snowball. We're going to utilize some of these things to help finance your college, right? We are going to have to take out some loans, right? But eventually we are going to use that cash value to help pay for it. And so I think when he started realizing, oh, they do kind of have a plan, right? And things like that.
My parents aren't idiots after all.
Right, exactly.
Our kids are the same. They're like, wow, you guys actually do have a brain. That's amazing.
Right. And so he kind of really started getting a little bit more into it of like, okay, how does this work? Things like that. So he doesn't ask often, but he will ask occasionally. Like,
now how are you? Yes. He's 18. He's going off to college. He's hearing all the talks about how to pay for college, right? He had this class where they said, you have to have the money to go. And I'm like, who are they talking to? What 18-year-old has the funds to go off to college? Even the local community college, like you don't have anything.
Yeah.
You have zero. Like, so it was, I was like, Dave Ramsey's a great base. Not gonna knock. If you can't figure out how to save and live within your means, IBC is gonna be hard. So you need that to start. So I was like, okay, learn what they're having to say. And another thing they said is never take out a credit card and things like that and pay for everything in cash. I was like, that's 100% Dave. I was like, okay, learn what they have to say, take it, with a grain of salt. We also at the time, after he finished that class, we then handed him our friend Mike Kwong's book, Dibs on Your Money. I was like, this is, the next step. After, if you can live.
Such a great book for building financial literacy, especially for young people.
Right. Yes. And he wrote it at a level that is understandable for somebody that's not, financially literate, so, and it's a very good job of explaining how IBC works and things like that. And then how, the money stacking and snowballing works. Yeah. And so that's, we wanted him to learn, what we're practicing now to prepare him for when he's an adult and he's starting to get money and he graduates from school and he gets a full-time job on, this, you need to start earlier than we did. Yeah. Right. So we want him, and we brought him to the boot camp that you guys held here last month, because that's where it started for us. And we're like, okay, it's time for you to start really paying attention to how we're doing this. And so we can educate him how we're doing this, so that when he is 100% financially dependent on only himself, he's ready to go. So, and we'll do the same with our daughter. So she's just a little behind. She's 14.
Yeah. Well, same thing. I remember, and as an educator, we're kind of tricky sometimes. We're always trying to find ways to teach people things, sometimes subtly. But I remember when I was studying for my Nelson Nash Institute test, which was, it's like a master's degree, like, the notebook's this big and the video for hours and hours. But I remember having Lily, my oldest, who's now 26, but at the time, having her help me study. I made all these flashcards, little note cards, and I was having her help me study.
Oh, fantastic.
And it was helping me, but I also wanted to start exposing her to that. Yeah. And I remember we set up a deal with the kids that if you attend a boot camp and you write a 2-page paper about what you learned, you can earn X amount of money. And so we started doing that, where we created a menu of things that we wanted them to do and learn. And then we would pay them for that learning. But then we weren't going to just give them money on the weekends when they wanted to go to Noodles and Co with their friends. Like, you can earn money, but we're going to get a little return on our investment, right? Yeah. That's so cool. Isn't it fun thinking about our kids being able to use this?
Oh, yeah.
And that's, and like I said before, with the death benefit and everything like that, that's kind of was my first thing. But then she kind of, was so into the cash value and things like that it was like, now I kind of look at it and go like, well, it's nice. They'll have money when I'm dead. They're going to have more, some money.
They're both incredibly important, I think, because before IBC, we had plans through work, and we still had. So before we did IBC, I had actually bought more than what the company would do, so that we could pay off the house. And in the event that I died all of a sudden, that we had money that came out of that policy that would pay off the house. That was kind of our biggest worry, is making sure that the next person didn't have to move, right? The kids and the remaining, adult could stay where they are and not have to uproot and change their whole life. So that was, we kind of more or less had that, but of course you work, it's only there if you're working. You don't work there, they don't give it to you anymore. So, having these in addition to that, made 100% sure that they had more than enough to pay off the house. But the cash value to be able to live while we're still living, is equally, in my opinion, as important.
Those living benefits, as they call them, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Because Toby, I think you and I are similar in this, is like that legacy piece of making sure that if I'm not around, my family is cared for. That legacy, that tax-free wealth transfer, the death benefit, that's super important to me. Yes, we're using it to finance our life and put kids through college, all those kinds of things. So it's all of it.
Right.
All of it's important.
It's exciting for me to think about Jacob and Kaylee, learning how to do this and setting it up for their children, the next generation, because they're going to get 100%, of the benefit of this policy from the ones that we are leaving them, and then the ones that they will be able to live off of, throughout their adulthood and pass on to their kids. So they're getting both ends of the spectrum on this. So, that's really exciting for me that we were able to start that hopefully for all of the future generations beyond us.
I'm curious, you guys have done such a great job of executing your IBC plan, right? And how you've used it. If you were to go back and learn about IBC all over again, is there anything you think about, if I was doing this again, I would do it differently, or I would make these changes?
So the only thing, knowing now, I didn't know then, I know now, probably would have started bigger. But like I said, I'm tight. So we gave away what I was willing to give away. And we kept, so we had X amount in savings. And I said, they can have this much. I still want this in savings because that's my,
I remember that.
That's my comfort. That's my blanket. I need that.
Yeah.
So knowing now, I probably would have gone bigger, but
was it hard for you to make the shift of looking at your premiums from being a bill to a deposit?
Yes. For me, yeah. Yes. For me, yes.
For her,
yeah.
Like I said, it was like, get through the first year, you get on to year 2, it is when it clicks.
It starts to click after a year 2 and 3, and you're using that money that you paid into it, and now you get to use it, and you get to use it multiple times.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and that's by year 3, we're like, can we start the next ones?
Yes.
Like I think we started before our 4th year, or right at the 4th year is when we started our next set of policies.
Right.
Because we were like, okay, we've got it. Let's go. Give them the money.
Yep.
Yeah. Toby, anything for you that you would do differently?
I mean, I personally think we started with a good amount. I think, we could have started with a little bit more, but the biggest thing for me is I just kind of look at it, and I was 40 at that point when we started, and it's like, man, if I had started at 25,
no doubt.
It's just like, man, had I done this, obviously we didn't know about it.
You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's my, if I can say a regret, it's like, man, I wish I could have heard about that before. And obviously that's not anything.
Possible.
Yeah, it's not possible. But that's the one thing that I'm just kind of like, how amazing would this have been, if I had 10 more years of it.
Well, and our mutual friend Mike Kwong always says, if you're looking at your life insurance illustration and you delay by a year or 2, it's not those first 2 years cash value you're missing on.
Right.
It's the ones down at the bottom.
Right.
And when you look at those, you go, oh yeah, I want to start as soon as I can.
Yeah, exactly.
When you look at the impact of what that is down the future. Yeah.
Yes.
You guys, this has been so fun for me. And part of it is I think we share some similar life experiences, philosophies, background, the whole Dave Ramsey thing, family of 4, education, family, all those. I started when I was 40. That's when I started our first policies. I was 40.
Awesome.
So I think we just share a lot of similar elements to our stories. And so it's fun to hear you guys talk about yours. And we've got to get you on the road, right?
Right.
Get you to the game. So I want to just say thank you both. Number one, for your trust in the beginning, trusting the LSL team, especially Mike and Pay. I know the trust is there because you worked with them and all that, and you saw how they were using it. But 2, just the ongoing engagement in your friendship. It's so fun when we got to come to Houston and get to meet Jake, and that's really fun for us. It is truly about long-term trusting relationships. That's what we love. And oh, by the way, we teach this little IBC thing,
right?
But truly, it's about getting to. It's kind of like being a teacher, like investing in someone's life and getting them to watch them grow, develop, and create the life that they want. That's so rewarding.
Yes.
Right.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
So
and we just we just want to say thank you because Mike and Pay led us to water, and let us drink and all that kind of stuff, and then having the dream conversation with you, we were talking about that this morning, and we're just kind of like, if we could go back to our dream conversation, it's we've gotten to that point where it's just kind of like, okay, now what do we dream? You know what I mean? And it's just so
we know.
Yes, we know.
You know what you're dreaming about?
Right.
we have more things on the to-do list.
But
it's that Viking world cruise, right?
Yes, exactly. But it's rewarding to go like, we did that dream conversation, 5 or 6 years ago, and we had that conversation and we were looking 10, 15, 20 years in the future. And now we're just at that point.
Where
and it's
we
like,
need to add to it. Right.
Holy moly, what else can we do? You know what I mean? Obviously, we've got to put the kids through college and do that kind of stuff, but we still have the opportunity to do more things. And it's just one of those things, like, we just want to say thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a joy to get to do the work that we do, which it doesn't feel like work, to be honest. It's really, I mean, how fortunate are we to get to do what we do, where this doesn't feel like work,
right?
This is fun. This is getting to invest in people's lives and hear their celebrations and their wins. Real quick, have you guys read a book called Die with Zero?
No.
I heard about it at a strategic coach conference that I was at. But one of the concepts, you guys were talking about the dream conversation, maybe needing to renew that. There's a concept in this Die with Zero book. You know how we create bucket lists?
Right.
Yes.
Well, he shared the concept of having time buckets because, for example, I'll give this example. My wife, who just turned 60 this year, said, man, I'd love to go hike the Grand Canyon with you. Well, I went and did it with a friend when I turned 50 for 8 days, and it kicked my tail. It was amazing. I loved it, but it kicked my tail.
Yeah.
And when she said that, I was like, well, that would have been good to have known like 15 years ago when we were younger and didn't have bad backs and all that stuff. So the guy's concept is break up your life in like 5-year increments, and then take your bucket list and put them when it makes sense, financially, physically, those kinds of things. So for example, if I want to go on cruising, isn't my thing. My parents love it. It sounds like you guys would love to do that. But you can go on a cruise when you're in your 60s or 70s, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, I heard one person say, like in your 60s is you go, right? It's your go-go years. You're going and having fun. You're retired or whatever. Your 70s is your slow-go years. And then when you turn in your 80s, it's your no-go years, right? So you think about those timeframes, like what could I do that makes sense in my 60s? What makes sense to do in my 50s or 40s or whatever? And you put those in time buckets. So I just encourage you guys, and if you want to do another dream conversation, either with me or it might actually be interesting. Jeff King does our dream conversations, and he brings a whole different element to it. So either one of us would love to do it. Jeff does them now for us, but since we did the first one together, I'm happy to do another one. But it might be kind of fun to renew your dreams.
That would actually be really fun. Actually, that would be something cool to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal. Okay. Well, let's wrap this up.
Okay.
Let you get on the road, Toby, so you can go root on your Cougs, right?
Yes.
Kelly, what are you going to do while he's gone? Or is that hush hush?
No, I'm supposed to do a crawfish boil if the rain holds out. So.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. Truly grateful for the time. To our listeners, thank you for joining us again. We're always amazed that how many people tune into these podcasts and want to hear the stories. I did go back and look, interestingly enough, when we do interviews with clients like this, the number of views is much higher. So what we're learning is they're tired of listening to us. They want to hear your stories. So we're going to try and do more and more interviews like that. So
awesome.
Thank you guys. To our listeners, thanks for joining us. Check us out at lifesuccesslegacy.com, and we'll catch you next time.